Well, often people talk about famous last words, and these words are often held on to long after people are gone. Ned Kelly, a local. Does anyone know what his famous last words were? Such is life. Yes, just before he was executed, his famous last words were, such as life. For Jesus, the words that he left his disciples in John 13 to 17 were some of the most important words ever. He is wanting to set them up for success, to teach them how to truly succeed. Chapters 14 to 17 contain Jesus' teaching, encouragement, and prayer. And it's in chapter 13 where Jesus leaves his last commandment to his disciples. And he says, it's a new one. Does this mean that the Old Testament never spoke about love? Or up until this point, Jesus had never spoken about love? Well, no. Love is, of course, central to many parts of the Old Testament, and it's in the book of Leviticus where the people of God were commanded to love their neighbours as themselves, which Jesus then includes as part of the greater commandments, along with love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind and soul. But this newness isn't so much a matter of never having heard the words like this before. It's a matter of the mode of this love, the depth, the type of this love. Love one another in the same way that I have loved you. It has been hard for the disciples to this point to even appreciate what Jesus has been doing on their behalf, and now he's telling them to copy him. A reminder here is that the love Jesus is talking about is not some sentimental gush. Not that there's anything wrong with that, ladies, is there? The love Jesus describes here a verb, a very practical love. It's a love that results in action, and it speaks more about heart motivation than anything else. The Greek word for love here is agape, or agape, I've heard people say it, and it's giving of oneself without expectation of return. It's the action of a servant or a slave. Agape love is acting in the interests of others, no matter who they are, how we feel, or what it costs us, without worrying about it being reciprocated back. It's putting another person's well-being ahead of our own. Not because they are lovable or even likeable, but because we feel like it in the moment, or because it's convenient or comfortable or even reasonable, but because that is what this type of love does. Can you imagine what our church would be like here if all of us became people who instinctively acted in the interests always of others, naturally putting others' well-being ahead of our own? Can you imagine the transformative impact that kind of love would have on this congregation and our witness to the world? This also means that loving one another, is broad and it's inclusive. It is not just the people we know and like and who are like us. We have defined the one another so tightly that it means we only love the people who reinforce our own sense of who we are. The one another that Jesus speaks of here are all of those that God has sent to us, those that God has put in our path. And that obviously includes those that worship with us on a Sunday, those that are part of our family of believers, but it also must extend to those we engage with through the week. This is too a community of faith. When people interact with our church family in any way across the 7 days of the week, do we love them like we love each other here? Do we love the newcomer, the outsider that looks a bit different to us? So I want to suggest 3 domains in which the outworking of agape love might look like. I'm just going to have a sip of water first before we get into it. Okay. We love people by serving them. Just as Jesus took up a towel and undertook the task of a slave by washing feet, we are often called to serve others in very practical, unglorifying ways which cause us to get dirty and uncomfortable. As a Salvation Army, this was one of the areas that historically the community has identified us as doing. We go to the last, the least, and the lost. We do the hard work of sitting with people in their pain, in their addiction, in their suffering, and we serve them irrespective of their actions or appreciation or lack thereof. There's an opportunity during the week, of course, to serve in this way, and if it interests you, again, we're always plugging this, aren't we? If you want to come along to that, and Penny, tell us what it's like at Salvos Connect during the week.
This place is alive.
There you go, this place is alive.
People just seeking to be able to sit and chat, and just walk past them, and I'm an introvert, but these people, like, come chat with me.
There you go. So come and chat with me if you'd like to be involved in that in any way. But I think I do have to highlight a couple of warnings here. The first is developing a sense of false humility, a sort of inverted pride, if you like, a pride at one's own humility and hard work. It sometimes looks a little bit like martyr syndrome. People serve really hard in difficult spaces, but sometimes with a background desire to be acknowledged. But with true agape love, there is no danger of that. This love is always about the other person, and it overflows into service, not in order to show off how hardworking it is, but because that is its natural form, concerned only with the other person. The other danger is to outsource this type of loving to others and believing that we are loving like Jesus did by doing that. Yes, we employ people to do some of this work, and yes, there may be some expectation that society, through the government, provide resources for this very practical assistance. But none of that diminishes the personal command to all of Jesus' disciples to love like he did. Just as Jesus picked up a towel and washed the feet of others, so too are we called to pick up our fresh, white, brand new towel and personally wash the sometimes very dirty feet of others. The second outworking of this type of love is caring relationally for people without expectation of return. And can I just say that I just want to encourage you here today. Here at Moreland City Core, you do this exceptionally well. From what I've seen. Since I've arrived, I've witnessed myself and I've heard from people how you love and you care for one another, and you do this very naturally, and you do it without expectation of return. And I've also been the recipient of some of that love and caring. So I want to thank you, and please don't stop being those people. It is beautiful. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, with practical caring for each other relationally is a job for all of us. If we are a disciple, we're called to care. It's not outsourced only to the officer or others in the leadership team. It's everybody's job. Now, I say this not to absolve myself or the core leaders of responsibility to care for our church. Not at all. We take this really seriously. But Jesus commands all of his disciples, all who follow him, that it's their job. To help us do this in the coming months, we're going to introduce a pastoral care system to ensure that all together we can care for each other. And more detail will come out about this soon, but we want everyone to have the opportunity to live out this command in a way that's supportive for all. Even those who traditionally have been pastoral carers themselves, or are generally the people that are always reaching out, even those people need to be cared for as well. We can't forget them. But you don't need to wait for the new system to come out. This week I encourage you to make a call, visit someone for no other reason than to make contact. I know many of you already do this, but I encourage all of you to do this. You don't need to provide counselling or anything like that. Just care about them. Listen to their situation. Listen and love like Jesus. Who remembers drive-in theatres? Yeah? Yeah, there is. You're right. I was really surprised to find one up the road when we moved here. I haven't been yet. But they are a completely different experience than watching a movie in an indoor theatre, aren't they? At the drive-in, you can bring your own snacks. You can stay in your car. You can enjoy the show without even having to say, excuse me, to another person to get into your row. At the drive-in, you could show up to the movie in your pyjamas and no one would have to know. You have the comfort and convenience of a little privacy. Some Christians would love a drive-in option for church. Don't touch anyone, don't talk to anyone, just watch the show in your pyjamas and go home when it's over. I must admit, during COVID, I may have done this a time or two, but it's going to be pretty difficult to walk in relationship with people the way God intends for us to if we never get out of the car. The relational caring that Jesus calls us to needs to make actual contact. It involves a little vulnerability and sharing. Now, people who find it difficult to get out of their homes due to health reasons or other factors out of their control also need to be cared for. So staying in touch through phone calls or cards or even a visit is a way that we can love like Jesus did. One of the challenges of modern Christianity in the Western church has been the influence of individualism. This way of thinking and seeing the world emphasises a personal relationship with God to the point that many people who call themselves Christians think community, walking together in life-to-life accountability, is optional. John Wesley, whose theology gave birth to the Salvation Army, said, "Christianity is not a religion for complete solitude and solitary. The Bible knows nothing of solitary religion." This doesn't mean that the spiritual discipline of solitude is not an important one. Jesus knew the need to withdraw and spend time in solitude, and we see this time and time again in Scripture. For Jesus, his spiritual walk was always done with others, though. His discipleship was done in a group. Teaching, praying, serving, all done in a group. And this is why intentional Christian community really is a non-negotiable part of being a healthy and effective believer. I think a challenge here for some of us is that we do our devotions and our prayer life in private, and often we don't share it with others. This is not the discipleship Jesus taught or modelled. Sharing our spiritual journey with others, encouraging, guiding, and gently correcting each other is the model that he taught, all done in love. We have Verge. Where's Jason? There you are. We have Verge, which is an online group that Jason and I know that Dennis and Alistair and others attend. They meet together. We've also got Coffee and Friends, a group of ladies who regularly meet together. Along with our new pastoral care groups I mentioned earlier, these groups will also provide an opportunity for us to care spiritually for each other, as well as relationally. And I want to encourage you to find a person who you can share your spiritual journey with and make regular catch-ups a priority. Encourage one another, keep each other accountable, and share life's journey with each other. In its essence, loving like Jesus did is really simple. We're to love others without expectation of return, practically, relationally, and spiritually. Those we're called to love are not just those in this room or those that we like, but those that Jesus brings across our path. Simple, right? Yeah? Conceptually, yes, but challenging in practice. To love like Jesus does requires us to preference the wants and desires of others over our own. And for this, we surely need the Holy Spirit, because it's just not how we're naturally wired. But when we do love like this authentically, all people will know that we are disciples of Jesus.